there's just one thing that nobody has mentioned, and when you talked about the levels of power in the movie, and something that, you know, I don't know, I picked up on this, but the other white guys on the plantation, and just how they were living, their non-level of education, and I think that was something that kind of, I don't even know what to say about it. You know, I think that's something that we should be reminded of, the fact that, you know, it wasn't that, you know, all white people were, you know, slave owners and they all had this money. They were living, it was like 10 of them in that one little shack, and the guy was in the tub. I mean, he had like 3 teeth between 2 men. I mean, it was really, you know, they were in bad shape. And I think, you know, sometimes we forget about that how many people were poor. There really was a time when, you know, there was really America where there was a have and a have-nots. And you had people who were venturing out west so they could stake their claim and things like that, because they were living in that still, you know, leftover imperialistic society where you had money or you didn't have money. If you didn't have money, you had to do whatever those who had money would let you do. And so I think that those levels of power are definitely apparent no matter what color of skin the characters had.
We touched on a lot of great scenes in this movie, a lot of scenes that were written for the shock value, but there were a lot of subtle scenes in this movie that I think had a lot more of an important message than what you're hearing in the media. For example, the scene with the sawing of the skull, in my opinion, was written to get that response, but the scene prior to that is really, in my mind, the most integral part of this movie, the most important part of this movie, is the scene where Sam Jackson is sitting behind the desk, and Leonardo DiCaprio's character comes in after being summoned by him, sits down and is being schooled by this housekeeper on who these people are in his house, why they're there, and what he needs to do about it. Right. The dynamic of power that was touched on earlier, it's a very subtle shift, and the fact that it was even introduced into the film, in my mind, is one of the things that I really love about it.
Somehow in these conversations about Django, people always want to make Django out to be a hero, and I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around the idea that this is what a black hero would look like. You know what I'm saying? This is just my own, you know, my own view of it. I really feel like, you know, knowing that Tarantino has seen, you know, these same movies that I referenced, you know, the Legend of Nigga Charlie and all these other blaxploitation films, to me, I think that he had many opportunities to expand the dialogue rather than monopolize on it. And so for me, Django not freeing slaves, I understand that it was a love story and that he was out to get his girl, but for me, you know, in the multiple times, the subtle things like, you know, why don't they shoot us, and that scene with the skull, you know, the idea that he didn't do anything in those moments. You know, for me, it's very, very hard for me to like put him up as a hero when there are films like, you know, The Legend of Nigga Charlie, where you have a black man that in the same right is put in a lot of those same circumstances and acts totally to the contrary. But that picture of a black man is too, I don't know, I think it's too radical or it's scary to white Hollywood, and that's why films like that don't get, you know, more credence. That's why it's not pushed out there, and you know, as much. So I don't know, just the idea of Django being painted as a hero.
I'm still on the borderline in between how I feel about the film. Depending on how I watch it, how I'm feeling about how I feel around the time I watch it, I have a different reaction. As Mecca has said, I've seen these blaxploitation films that were westerns that Django borrows heavily from. Like, think I'm playing, YouTube these films. They're Fred Williamson, The Ghost of Nigga Charlie, The Legend of Nigga Charlie, Boss Nigga. The first half of Django comes from all those films. The first half comes from all those films, with the exception of a couple of takes out. My problem with the film is, I think that the character of Django was a little flat. I would like to have seen more from him. I think that a lot of the controversy around the film is based on the wrong stuff. I don't think that it's. I hear people arguing that it's one of Tarantino's best, and that right there, in my honest opinion, is bullshit. I think that it's after top 5 as far as writing, but what it does do is something that a lot of films have not. It starts this dialogue, and dialogues like this, which is very important. I think that I'm still watching it. Like, I've seen it a couple times.
How many?
6. I've seen it. Look, I ain't go to the movie 6 times. I'll tell y'all that right now. But anyway, what I'm saying is, it's the type of film. It's a film with layers, and certain scenes in the film piss me off because they eat at things that I've gone through. It's kind of like how you said, like, you've seen a man die at a young age. I've seen it. I've survived 3 drive-bys, and I've been shot. I look at certain things differently, and because of what I've been through in my path in life, I've witnessed things that other people haven't. So it's certain things in that film that touch on the Mandingo fighting, the cracking of the skull, I just killed the slave trader, I'm giving you a gun, and you don't know what to do with it. See, it's things like that speak to me. But overall, I think that the dialogue that the film has started is good, but I really think that we need to really peel back the layers of Django. I think it was a large task. I think that he rushed the script because it's not his best script.
Well, with the script, I think that was more Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because again, there was you guys came in late, but there was the first script that was written got stripped down tremendously from what Tarantino was originally presenting to them to say, let's make this movie. And I'm not saying that fixes those things that you mentioned.
No, but that probably would. You know, because I think there's a lot of gaps.
And Spike Lee, he probably did feel hurt because he couldn't bring in a crowd just like that for that particular type of film. So,
he has a chance now. Oh boy.
Well, but still almost a slap in the face. It's just like the perfect point that you made. You have to think: is he doing this film because of Django? Now he's really going to try to rally people up and say, well, you guys supported this, then you got to come out and support me. You know what I mean? It's not like he had this idea that sparked even before Django to say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to be justified by it. Now it's more or less like, I got to show and prove. This thing came out, everybody loved it, no one listened to me, so now I got to speak with the film I'm about to put out. And as a matter of fact, when that come out, that'll be a dope discussion to have. Even a parallel to Django and what this new film is going to be.
And that might have been why he said what he said, because he knew he was working on that. I mean, you don't know.
Right.
You know, he's like, no, don't go see it. I mean, you know, you don't know.
Right. Don't go see that, but come see the joint that I'm about to do because I'm going to do it justice.
Right. There was a scene regarding like with the Ku Klux Klan. The dude that brought up was like, when the dude put the mask on, he was like, we can't see anything out of this. I was like, that's a metaphor.
It was borrowed from Birth of a Nation, that whole scene.
Yeah. That's what I was holding off to speak on when we were talking about the things that Tarantino borrowed. Because it happens in comic books and anime as well. And what normally happens is someone will see something, get influenced by it, and realize the masses will never see this. And I'm not saying it's right, but they realize the masses will never get exposed to this, and I can do that. So they'll take those things. Now, should they give credit back, or should they note that they did that? Yes. Is that going to happen? Probably not. But that's another one of those things where if he hadn't borrowed those elements and put it into that movie, conversations would have never happened because it would have never been seen by some of the people here. Because those movies you named, most people here haven't seen them. You know, it's only a selected number of people, like Goodbye Uncle Tom. Me and Marcus saw that like, what, 6-7 years ago? And people still are like, what are you talking about? So, and I felt like Tarantino has seen that movie as well. So that's where it's kind of that weird balance of, yeah, credit should be given, but on the flip side, these people would have never saw those movies, more than likely. And now because of that movie, you guys bring this one to the table so people will
So
walk
people
away
go
and
back
go
and
find
check it
out about those movies. So it's kind of that.
But how would people find out about those movies if you don't reference them?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you guys coming in and bringing it up.
No, but in the conversation we are referencing it, but it's not something that I hear him talking about. This wasn't even going to be my point, but I just feel like we've seen all of these characters played out on the screen before. So I think that my issue is that it's when the story is being told from a black perspective by a black director or by a black writer, a lot of times, like even Django had to be dumbed down. The script was dumbed down, like you said. I think that image is very confrontational, and whereas the way Django was presented is a little bit more soothing to the white Hollywood sensibility. So I think it just impresses again the importance of seeing diverse thought processes on black experience. We only get to see one side. It's either Spike doing it or it's Tyler Perry doing it. And if it's not those two perspectives, then you're wrong. There are so many other black writers, so many other, it's not to make it a colorblind conversation. I just feel like it impresses on me every time I see that movie that black people need to be able to tell their story and have it promoted in an equal way, because then we would have a diversity in this dialogue.
Right.
What the sister was saying about how movies are stripped down and stuff, and I'm coming from a consumer's perspective, not a director perspective or someone in the industry or who has a great passion for it, and I think in the room people have great passion and expertise in it, and they see different things that they were seeing in the movie, but just coming from a consumer's perspective going to the movie and the escapism factor in it. And I think a lot of us go for that, the escapism. And I think a lot of movies that are have a black theme to it, if I can put it that way, quote unquote, we then want to always throw a documentary twist on it. That it should be a documentary, even though it's an escapism film. The other thing that always bothers me, and this may sound hypocritical, just for the mere fact that I am a human being and living through it, is that different level of power. When we say we want something different, we always go to that same power to try to convince them to change and to build the stuff. And that's not going to happen. To fill their palate, whoever it is, they're going to make it to as powerful for them, whether to make money or not. And we continue to go and say, here's this, you dumb it down to our expectations, and then we get upset. Well, you keep going to the same thing. Now, I do understand the reality of the power structure and how it works. But I think that's a big issue, and I think you got the broom on fire, and you're trying to beat it with another broom that you just happen to have it next to the stove that has some grease next to it. I really think that's how we live. I mean, no, they're not going to put a film up there that has all that great depth to it because it's going to incite certain things. Right. But if it's someone else who can make it, they need all this financial structure, all this distribution somewhere else, and then you need the customer, the enthusiasm to go do it. When enthusiasm is already set up, we'll go see a movie about a computer television running around a junkyard. As a consumer, there's some deep things in that movie, but just on the do it, because there's a whole structure. So I hear you talking. But I think a lot of times when we talk about all that stuff, we're saying to the same people who are never going to change it.
I was more or less saying it for, like I know there's a lot of artists in this room, people that do what I do. It's just like, it gets disheartening because I know I'm not the only person that, feels that way. Like, it gets disheartening when you are trying to put it out there and you are making your own film. Everybody doesn't have to like every person's film. That's not the point of the story. I'm just saying it gets frustrating when you do create it and you are, constantly putting out a diverse side of just American culture, period, American experience. And it's just looked at as, because you're a black person or because you're a black filmmaker, you're making a slavery or it's a documentary or it's the urban this. And it can't just be a story about a person that's in love or a story about a person that has a sucky job or whatever it is, because our experience is different. So I think my comment was more for those that, you know, do right, to continue to do that, to continue to tell our story, because that really is the void. We can't keep waiting for Hollywood to say, okay, yeah, we're gonna tell this story just as a love story, not as a black love story or a slave love story. You know what I'm saying? We have to flood the market with so many different stories that there's no reason that they can't pick.
Brian?
Yeah, I have one little thing. My opinion of the movie actually just changed today with it. I'm taking it now because I really don't know flavor. I don't. And I think
Charlie's from New York.
So, I mean, we don't, I don't know. It's cool, I didn't learn anything about slavery. I didn't. And, the Schultz character, I think he actually was meta, the whole Schultz character. Schultz was me. I don't know anything about it. I'm looking at everything through his eyes. And his part, everything he was seeing, I was seeing for the first time. That's why I'm thinking, like, he couldn't walk away. And then Quentin's saying, you can't walk away from this stuff. You know? Yeah, you may get killed, but you know what? Someone got to stand up for this. Like, yeah, and it's, you know, if he just took the money and walked, he knows inside himself it was just not, it wasn't the right thing to do. And if you could look, seeing everything through his eyes from the beginning of that movie to where he goes, and then when Schultz goes, that's when Django, I think, becomes the hero. He steps up, he outsmarts the guy, and it just, the whole movie just changed right there for me, because the Schultz I was the audience, it was me. Right. And now I'm seeing it differently. Right. So I don't know, that's why that got that from me.
And maybe look at things from a different place when you go home. And I just want to ask before you guys speak, has any of this helped you to kind of fill some things out a little, or you still feel like you're kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I almost feel like I don't have a voice in some of the issues that we talked about the first half. But as we've gotten into the second half, I feel like, well, I have a voice in that. Those are things that are more on the creative side. They're more on, and then you get into the representatives, what they represent, and the metaphors. So yeah, I do. It's just, and it may be a good thing for me not to be so quick to rush to a decision on what I think about something. The older I get, the more voices I want to hear. That's just, you know, what this book did, what this movie did for me was inspired me to read. I've read some slave narratives. I learned about William and Henrietta Craft, and never had read that story. I sent it straight to a friend of mine who's a writer, and I said, do something with this. Just do something with it. It's got to be, people got to see this. So it's inspired me to read some things that maybe are a little outside of what I would normally read. So just to hear more voices.